Now, Vault 13, which is from Fallout 1, was supposed to get an extra water chip because they knew that the water chip was going to break at some point. Turns out they had a shipping error. Vault 13 has an extra Gek, and Vault City has the water chip. Don't worry, though. We'll fix it on the next shipment. As long as the apocalypse doesn't happen, we're good. Oops.
God, can you imagine? That'd be so embarrassing if the apocalypse were to happen right now.
As long as that doesn't happen, we're good. Aw, and then Fallout happens.
Aw, beans.
Just in the middle of writing that email, don't worry, we'll get it on the next shipment. Drops.
Yeah, they pan over to the window. You just see the mushroom cloud behind them.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be all about post-apocalyptic storytelling and storytelling events in post-apocalyptics. Basically, what kind of stories and such that happen when you have a post-apocalypse. Now, to help me out with this episode, I have a couple guests on my side, and over to my right is going to be...
My name is Liz, also known as Zombie Hand. You can find me mostly on Twitter and Instagram under Zombie Hand Creations. I do work for GTP, I do art, and I stress out a lot.
All right. Nearby is going to be our buddy. You know him, you love him.
Hello, my name is Dane. I go by DN Dane on the internet. I'm a Twitch streamer and award-winning DM. I also do work for GTP. You may have heard these dulcet tones before. Hello. Welcome back. Good to see you. The good.
All right. And also with us is the guest who's been around for a few episodes now.
Hi, I'm WG Ashwood, your fancy-focused charity host. You can find me on Twitch and TikTok at Ashwood Audio. I go live on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays, and I like to feature D and Dane on a couple of streams here and there.
It's true.
Wow.
We tag team. It's awesome.
And just to make sure nobody forgets, I am your host for this podcast, Leo, also known as the Geek Scorpio. Now, with that being said, let's go take a quick trip over to the magical merch booth. Here we are in the magical merch booth, and today's magical merch booth is going to be brought to you and sponsoring and also collaborating with WG Ashwood. Ashwood, why don't you tell us a bit more about your streams and such, and sort of how they flow and things, and when they're on?
Sure. We are a variety streamer, so we play a bunch of different games. We play for a lot of charities. We do a different charity every month. This month, the month of when we're recording, we are doing the Oxford House, New Orleans, which helps individuals to get sober. So we are fully supporting that with a portion of anything that we make at the channel. So, but we like to have fun and dress fancy and have a good time. And like I said, that's on Sunday, Monday, and Thursdays.
Now, there's going to be a link for that in the description of this. And I've checked out a couple of these and I've been on there. It's a fun time for everybody.
So happy to hear that.
Cannot recommend high enough.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
I'm just saying, I can't recommend them high enough. Go watch Ashwood Audio. It's amazing.
I love a good charity stream.
Always an amazing time. He raises money for charity. Like, what?
What more do you want?
Yeah.
You're a monster if you don't.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little harsh.
A little harsh.
No, you
but
heard it here
true.
first. You're a monster if you don't tune into streams.
It's
I
true.
heard that. And then
Also-
Leo's editing that part out and throwing it out. That being said, let's get back to the show. Yay! Woo! So today's episode that we're going to be talking about is post-apocalyptic storytelling. Stories and such that takes place in a post-apocalyptic environment. If you're wanting the inspiration for that, two big post-apocalyptic shows and movies are going to be coming out in the next couple of months. Fallout will be available for during Amazon Prime coming out in April, and the next following month is the movie Furiosa will be coming out. And we'll be exploring some of those, but honestly, we keep going back to these stories for post-apocalyptic, when after the apocalypse or after something bad has already happened. So with that, before we get started, we're going to have to define what is a post-apocalyptic scenario or a post-apocalyptic story. So when you have stories that lead to some event, something that's catastrophic, and in most cases the world can't exactly come back for. Typically, it's either physically the world can't come back for, or socially the world has a difficulty of coming back for, and that's when society collapses. And so, with that, anything that happens after the event that did that is post-apocalyptic. Now, sometimes your stories can vary in very many ways of how the post-apocalyptic storytelling goes. Like even Merriam-Webster's dictionary comes up as post-apocalyptic defined as an adjective for existing or occurring after a catastrophically destructive disaster or apocalypse. So when we talk about that, we kind of have to explore what the apocalypse is. And that's sort of a big factor on it. Now, you don't have to be specific to that, to what that apocalypse is. Some stories get really weird when you define your post-apocalypse. Just some event has to happen that radically changes the world, and you can't undo that. Like, if you want, I guess before we get started, we're kind of want to talk about sort of the king of the post-apocalypse storytelling, which is Mad Max. Let's just go dive right into it. Mad Max as a post-apocalyptic story, especially from its first iteration from its first film, and it was directed and written and I believe produced as well by George Miller. And that spawned Mad Max. And then with Mad Max being so popular, it ended up coming with its more popular version, which that came out, which is the second movie, Road Warrior. Mad Max 2 or Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior. Really sort of depends where you are in the world on how that's presented to yourself. And then after that, you have Beyond Thunderdome. There's also, to make things a little more confusing, you also have Mad Max Fury Road, which sort of takes place nebulously within some of this for it.
I could do a whole Mad Max podcast and discuss the timeline of how Fury Road fits in there versus how it was originally supposed to fit in there. But maybe I won't spend that time.
That'll be for an episode. So the reason why Mad Max is key, we'll go back to the first three movies, which is Beyond Thunderdome, Road Warrior, and Mad Max itself. You actually see how the apocalypse is affecting the post-apocalyptic scenarios. Isn't a completely isn't one and done. It just you slowly see how society is collapsing in that. In the first movie, Mad Max is a cop. He's a patrolman patrolling the roads while people are going crazy and either traveling into the Australian wasteland. And anybody who's been in Australia, there's a big part of Australia that's just desert. Like, fuel is important. In fact, there's a road, the world's basically straightest road is in Australia, and it just goes straight across Australia in one line because there's not much there to interrupt it. And Australia itself has a bunch of crazy animals and things, and it's a survival wilderness. But you start seeing the effects of their apocalypse. And it gets kind of weird because depending on which of the stories of Mad Max and even all the spin-offs, the apocalypse is different for each one of them. The first movie, I believe, the apocalypse is resources and fuel. Specifically, fuel itself is going on.
They say it's the gasoline wars, so it's like
Right.
gasoline. But they don't, in the first three movies, they don't really change. Like, that's always been the catalyst for the apocalypse. It's just you're seeing the degradation of society and how in the first movie, you definitely have a lot of, like, you have diners and cafes, you have people, watching TV and such. And, like Max still lives with his wife and son in a pretty nice house. But we know that gasoline has become an extremely scarce resource, and that's like the catalyst for the apocalypse. But in Road Warrior, that's like one of the big things is that tanker full of gasoline that needs to be protected so that they can get to what's hopefully a paradise or some sort of salvation that's like maybe on the coast or whatever. And so it is still like, and even in Thunderdome, it's just like a world beyond, like there's no gasoline left. Society has all but gone away. You get those like pockets of society, like Tina Turner's society. I don't like to think too much about Thunderdome. I don't. It's not my favorite, but you also get like the kids' society. So it's not really like retconning itself or anything. It's keeping the same apocalypse. It's just showing like how that one event really like took it to like how that made it go from, oh, we're having wars over gasoline, like worldwide wars over gasoline, to this.
And so your storytelling basically takes place for Mad Max. For his purposes, Mad Max is mostly just the lone wanderer who's entering into a town to, and like the lone cowboy who's walking in, or the lone samurai who just showed up at the village. That's the story for Mad Max in general, and stuff happens near and around him. But all of this is a problem because there's an post-apocalyptic. Everyone else is scrambling. It's one of the most repeated lines that Max has in Road Warrior, and it's "I'm here for the gas. I'm here for the gas." That is it. That is you have. I have summed up at least 50% of Mel Gibson's script for Mad Max. I'm here for the gas.
Yeah, that's what he's there for, is the gas, and he just wants to be on his way.
And as dramatic and as amazing as that movie is, because it's a good tour de force. If you want something that's very practical and such, and George Miller is really good at that, and you'll see that also in Fury Road. You will see that really well done here in Road Warrior. There's a reason why Road Warrior is sort of and the Mad Max series is sort of treated as the staple of what a post-apocalyptic storylines can look like. But that's all your key. You have to have some kind of event that happens, and you can't really go back to that world. In this case, with all the gas that's missing, you can't undo that. There's no more gas. So you have to see how the world survives, how the world strives. And if your main character is like Mad Max, sometimes there's just people here who are literally, I'm here for one thing, get me some gas, and I'm moving on.
Can I tell you a fun fact about that's not doesn't really have much to do with the apocalypse aspect, but just something fun about Max's car. Even in Thunderdome, which is something like 17 years after the first movie, half of his car is still part of his car is still part of the wagon that he's having pulled through the desert.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's really cool.
That's my car. That's another thing out of the apocalypse. Just what people carry with them is either completely utilitarian. Very few things that Max is carrying with him isn't there for some sort of utility and such. Those are luxuries, and you're on pure survival for it.
Can I tell you one of my favorite theories I've seen for Mad Max?
Yeah, go for
It
it.
is that it's the story of Mad Max is actually being told like around the campfire in the post-apocalypse, and you're just like witnessing as if some old aged storyteller is explaining like this hero of the waste, that lone samurai that goes from town to town being a hero, or telling some kind of like big action story just to like take the time and pass the time like you would around the campfire.
Hmm.
I
And so
think that
that
kind of.
explains
Sorry, go ahead.
that just kind of explains some of the inconsistencies, or why you can have like this like, oh, I'm here for the gas. It's like that like one line type
Mhm.
of deal.
I definitely think I buy that. I think back to, this is not Mad Max related per se, but this
Mhm.
is, I think it leads credence to that theory that if you've seen the Dragon movie 2002 Reign of Fire,
Yeah, I've seen
uh,
that. And that is a
they
post-apocalyptic movie.
it is, and it's fine. It's no Mad Max, but
Oh, no.
one of the scenes that has always stuck with me is that there is a scene where they are gathered in a hall around a campfire, and this guy he's narrating Star Wars.
Mhm.
Nice.
He's
Hey.
doing this scene of Star Wars, and they've got broom handles. One of them's red, one of them's blue. They're kind of acting out this stage play in the post apocalypse. So I think, I mean, that really makes sense to me, right? Like, yeah, there's this
Mhm.
man named Max, and he wanders the desert, and he's looking for gasoline or
Yeah.
whatever. I think that's a really cool theory.
I love that.
Now, if you're wondering about why we have these post-apocalypse stories, we've had them before in a weird way. Like our Earth, for its natural life, has no, as far as I can tell, has at least historically two post-apocalyptic events. The first one is the Ice Age, nearly wipes out the most of mankind, gets to the small pocket that's in Africa, and that's how civilization society starts breaching and coming back when the temperature comes back for that. The other one is what's known as the Bronze Age collapse. we don't know much about what happened. We just know we have the Bronze Age, and then the whole thing goes away.
I know
And then
historically. I'm sorry. Good.
no, go for it. Go ahead.
Historically, we've had kind of some minor. They're not apocalypses, right? And that, like with the Ice Age,
Yeah.
that was very close to us not existing.
Mhm.
But we've had sort of smaller apocalyptic events, I would say. So, like the bubonic plague,
Mhm.
most of the Western world was affected by that. A lot of the Eastern or Southeastern world, not so much.
Mhm.
But kind of an apocalyptic event, right? So we do
Right.
see some of those. Also, how dare you forget the dinosaurs, sir?
Their post-apocalypse didn't really work out for them very much.
No.
We're still
We
in the middle
are.
of that story.
But
We
there
are
was
their
a post-apocalypse,
post-apocalypse.
and we're living it now.
We are the dinosaurs post-apocalypse.
So it all comes back to, as long as there has been society, there have been people saying the end is near. Like as soon as you put the first buildings up, someone made a little cardboard sign that said the end is near. And so you've always had like the doomsayers out there prophesying the apocalypse, and so of course we're gonna have those stories that come after the fact that
Mhm.
the next big thing that's gonna wipe everything out, the next plague, the next weather event that's going to crash society. You've
Mhm.
always had that. So we've always had this like storytelling aspect of what comes next, what comes after.
Mhm.
So it's always very exciting.
Yeah, and it's also with that storytelling that affects what is the tale of yore on that. Sometimes the tale has the post-apocalyptic is just a big setting for itself. And most of the time that's how it works out. It's the setting. Nobody's really trying to solve the whole world of the post-apocalyptic. How is this story going to try to deal with the problem? Sometimes you do. So like for example, the Fallout series. Fallout 1, you're trying to just save your vault. That is it. You're exploring the wastelands to try to get yourself a water chip so that way your vault can have water. Oh, this is and you're just basically barely figuring out people are still alive. Also, as I've learned from our buddy Rob who's playing, anytime he plays that Fallout and bumps into Vault Tech, the guys who make all the vaults, and one of the fun things about it is some of those vaults are all faulty into a and or broken or used for experimentation. Just tell yourself, stay classy, Vault Tech. Stay classy. He's gone through most of 76 right now, and it's very weird.
I do really like Fallout 1,
Mhm.
trying to get water.
Yeah.
Fallout 3, aliens.
Mhm. Also
Natural
water.
progression.
Yeah. The water to aliens timeline.
Well, because it's a sort of a neat thing with Fallout is you have one main goal, you deal with that goal, and then there's a secondary goal that you realize that comes ops out after you solve the first problem. Or as Zombie Hand has showed me, he's like, because I'm a big fan of the Fallout series. He goes, "Oh, you got to check out the speed run." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm checking out the speed run of Fallout 1. You can beat Fallout 1 if you have the right stats in under 14 minutes."
Very impressive.
It's very impressive, except I have a fridge moment, walk around, go to my fridge, get a snack, and then we're like, hold on a second. This is the absolute worst ending you could possibly have.
Sometimes that's how you do a speed run, is you get the worst ending. I love watching speed runs, so
It's
that'll
like
be
one of the Far Cries. You can beat it in 5 minutes if you just stand there and don't say anything.
Yeah.
Oh, is
I think it's 4?
no
4 or
four
5?
four takes. So Far Cry 5 I think takes like, if you just stand there for like 5 minutes, you and then they're like, everyone's like, arrest him, he's a cult leader, and if you don't do it, he's like, yeah, no, just go, turn around, go on your way, and you leave and the game ends. in four if you're having dinner with, or lunch or whatever, with Pagan Min, and then he's like, something, he gets a call or whatever and is like, oh, just a minute, I'll be right back, and then he's like 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes, and then if you don't get up from the table, if you just stay at the table for 10 minutes, Pagan Min comes back and goes, oh my god, you stayed. Okay. And then he takes you to your mother's, like the temple where your mother's ashes have been buried, or where her like body is or whatever. You go there, you pay your respects, and then when you leave, he's like, are you done? Cool, let's go blow shit up. And then you get in the helicopter with him and you leave.
Ridiculous. I love it though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now Fallout 2, you go off to find the Gek, which is the Garden of Eden creation kit, is a way to try to terraform your land to remove the radiation and what it was before the world. Here's the thing: the Gek works, but there's not a way that that thing will work on on a global scale. So it works for this one tiny town. And not all the Geks work, actually. If you go to a place called Vault City, their Gek broke halfway through trying to terraform their place.
Whoops.
Whoops the doodle.
I guess half is better than nothing.
Well, they used it's funny because so here's a little fun spoiler for that one. It's if you talk to enough people, you find out Vault City used to have two Geks. However, however, there was a shipping error, and so because they knew that their Gek was going to be broken, so they were supposed to get a new Gek in the part of a shipment error. Now, Vault 13, which is from Fallout 1, was supposed to get an extra water ship because they knew that the water ship was going to break at some point. Turns out they had a shipping error. Vault 13 has an extra Gek, and Vault City has the water ship. Don't worry though, we'll fix it on the next shipment. As long as the apocalypse doesn't happen, we're good. Oops.
God, can you imagine? That'd be so embarrassing if the apocalypse were to happen right now.
As long as that doesn't happen, we're good. Aw, and then Fallout happens.
Aw, beans.
Just in the middle of writing that email, don't worry, we'll get it on the next shipment. Nuke drops.
Yeah, they pan over to the window. You just see the mushroom cloud behind them.
Oh man, but yeah, so like that's just some of the stuff that keeps happening in Fallout, and then Fallout 4 is 200 years at that point over the apocalypse. Still problems, still mutations, still situations on it.
You know what, Leo? They're trying.
They're trying
okay?
their best.
They're doing what they can.
Mhm.
I don't know if they are, actually. I've never played it.
Well, the only group that would probably have the technology and resources and the know-how to fix it is Vault-Tec, and Vault-Tec stays classy.
Stay classy,
I
Vault
mean,
Tech.
Mr. House is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of which, let's take a second for New Vegas. I love the way Mr. House works. All right, I know that the war is going to happen because this all takes place by a resource war. That's how Fallout starts. And then once it gets to a certain escalation of that resource war, atomic bombs get dropped. And in fact, it's in the storyline. Nobody knows who starts this thing. And in Fallout 1, they say it the best. At some point, somebody dropped the first bomb. Nobody knows who dropped the other bombs, but in 10 minutes, nobody cares. Once all the apocalypse is happening, not my biggest deal who started this thing. Now it's afterwards.
Hey, in a similar vein,
Hmm?
Absolute spoilers for Far Cry 5. Far Cry New Dawn is actually a sequel to Far Cry 5 if you get the ending where where the atomic bomb goes off.
Mhm.
Which essentially so there's two major endings outside of the one in the very beginning. One of them, so you're given the option when you go to arrest Joseph Seed at the end, you can walk away or you can arrest him. If you walk away, I actually really, it's just really messed up, and I think it's really neat. Where it proves that you're brainwashed by the cult, and a song comes on that is like the brainwashing like activation, and it activates you when you turn and kill the people that you're in the car with, and it implies that you go back to the cult. But then there's the other ending where you arrest Joseph Seed, and as you are like getting him into the car or whatever, a mushroom bomb goes off in the background, or like an A-bomb or something in the background, thus proving him correct. He's a doomsday cult leader, and he is prophesizing the falling of bombs. But by you arresting him, I mean, the bombs were going to drop anyway, but he's a cult leader who's convinced that he's like a prophet or whatever. And so the fact that these bombs drop right after you arrest him, and he's like, if they try to take me, bad things are going to happen. Anyway, he's like, I knew I was right. But then Far Cry New Dawn is a sequel, a direct sequel, like 20 years or 25 years later or something from that ending. And it is a nuclear apocalypse, and people just find it. And it's different from Fallout, which I appreciate. I think that's really neat.
Now, Fallout.
Anyway.
Now, the reason why this is important is because the main thing that people deal with, and it's a theme through, especially the first 3 or 4 Fallouts, is water. And so as long whoever can have fresh water is what controls or at least has sort of power, I would say. But the problem is water is such an important resource and so scarce that simply holding out water is too dangerous to do something like that, to hang on to it. So if you can find a source of fresh water, great. But if you hoard that source of fresh water, people might just and raiders might just attack you just to get their hands on that water.
Little known fact. People like having water.
People like water. You kind of need it.
It's one of the things. We're kind of sticklers for it.
Now, this will come up in a future podcast when I talk about currency, actually, in fictional currency and some real world examples. But there's a little dialogue thing on there if you're paying attention to all the Fallout games, is this. The reason why bottle caps is such a big thing in Fallout is because what used to be the first source of water is, or any liquid that isn't fully radiated enough that you can drink, was Nuka-Cola bottles. And so one bottle of Nuka-Cola was supposed to represent one bottle cap. And what they would do is that they would take water from when someone had a fresh source of water, they needed something to store it in. So they put it in bottles of Nuka-Cola bottles and use them as water. And that's why the currency has been moving around. People believe that the only thing that they have for that water traders can trade is water. And they're so valuable and important that the bottles of water became a source of currency. And also why, and that later became just the bottle caps.
Huh.
But that changes how their society is, which is important because one of the things in Fallout 76 is that someone is trying to restart currency with gold and no one cares. Gold is like one of the most useless things that you can find in that.
Everyone's like, wow, way to try. A for effort. Gold star is more valuable.
In Fallout 2, gold is the currency that you use, but it only works while you're in the game of Fallout 2 because once you leave that area, nobody cares about gold. And it's because water is the more important resource, and that's where you would trade and such. Now, that being said, that's sort of in Fallout's world, you have problems. Mutants, monsters, radiation, a whole lot of things. And that's sort of your defining element for this. Now, you have to keep in mind, just because you have an apocalyptic event doesn't mean that it's a post-apocalyptic story. For example, and this is a weird case to do this, My Hero Academia. The apocalyptic event is people are starting to spontaneously have superpowers. The real problem is over 90% of the population has superpowers unchecked. However, by setting up schools like UA and training and defining that a superhero is somebody who uses their powers, not necessarily for good, but as a civil service, versus people who are not using their power, who are using their powers all willy-nilly, that's the definition between a superhero and a supervillain that they have. But since society itself, it doesn't collapse, even though they have an apocalyptic event, that's more of a dystopia of some sort. Or a different type of storytelling on that one. So just because you have an event doesn't make it an apocalypse. An apocalyptic event doesn't mean that it's a post-apocalyptic, because the world kept going, basically, societally wise and such.
It could become a dystopia.
Oh, dystopias are easy because you have, say, a society or something. It just kind of sucks.
Man, can you imagine what that might be like living in one of those?
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of when it's like, you're in one.
Yeah. You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner.
That's it.
You're in one.
You're in one. I love those movies so much. Anyway, not a podcast.
But yeah, so now the reason why I bring that up is, technically speaking, that isn't a post-apocalyptic event. Another thing that you would have is, we talk about radiation and nuclear fallout as a post-apocalyptic event, but that's really just the most popular one. Nukes happen, and that is. If you want the second most popular, or actually, I guess it would be the most written one about, the zombie apocalypse.
Zombies!
I need to correct myself real quick. I said Miss Turner. It's Miss Swan. Well, no, maybe she gives her name as Turner.
Spoiler.
I don't remember.
That's a spoiler.
She does say that. She actually does say Miss Turner, or that she does call herself Elizabeth
Before
Turner.
You at me in the comments, I was right or wrong, and then right after.
No,
the fact.
You were right, because she does give her name as Turner, which is why they want her in the first place, because they're like, well, she's got the curse, or she's got the blood that can lift the curse, so let's do it, and then she doesn't.
Right. Okay, cool.
And that's a weird case of false identity.
Never mind. I'm awesome.
You are amazing.
You are.
Zombie apocalypses I've always found really interesting. There's a number of ones that I think kind of exemplify the genre.
Mm-hmm.
The one I go to, the book, not the movie, World War Z.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
Fantastic.
That one's so good. I love that the book is written in a way that, because it's very like, this was a real event and none of us remember it because it was so traumatizing.
Yeah.
So I found the people that do remember it, and so it's almost like you're being gaslit while reading it, and it's just like, it's so well done.
And the fact that it's written as like an oral history, I think, is very interesting and not something you see a lot in books.
Yeah.
You know, this is one guy going around interviewing survivors of the event. And some of these people are there day one. Some of these people stumble into it day 100. And it's sort of just their collective lived experiences that are collected under this reporter doing a story about it.
Yeah.
So good.
That is one that is really good. And I feel like another one that is very popular, and I don't want to get into too deeply on because everybody has opinions. But that I feel does a really unique job of the zombie apocalypse in a way would be, okay, it's kind of going to be a tie between The Walking Dead and The Last of Us, because those tended to both focus more on the survivors than the zombies, and so it wasn't about like your kill count or how many zombies you've taken down or what that's like. It really is like, how are we going to survive? What are the group dynamics? Who ends up taking charge, and how do they butt heads with other people? Do we take on survivors? Do we trust other people? Do we not? How do we distribute food? And I feel like that tells such a more engaging and impactful story in a lot of ways, because like, when I say I cried like at least 4 times in The Last of Us, like, it's because they really dig the characters into your heart. And like that, yeah, a mess, emotional mess. But there's like almost no levity to that game, and so like there's very few moments where you laugh, and so like you treasure when you do, but then you leave the game just emotionally exhausted. And then The Walking Dead, I stopped halfway through season 5, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm almost ashamed I went that long. But that one was also very much the same in the beginning, because Rick wakes up in the hospital and is like, what the hell happened? And then he has to find his wife, who thinks he's dead or isn't sure what happened to him, and what's going on with Shane and her son, and then the people on the farm, and you know, I think that they do really phenomenal jobs at telling emotional human stories in zombie apocalypses.
And I think that's kind of what really makes that genre work, right? Because you can throw a bunch of monsters at anybody, right? But the ones that shine through are the human stories, because it gives you something to connect to.
Exactly.
Walking Dead, I think, is a great example. Obviously, Last of Us 1 and 2, phenomenal games, great series. I rather enjoyed both the media around those that property. Another one kind of similar, I mean, but more of a comedic bent, Shaun of the Dead, I think is very fun.
That
one is amazing.
That one became, so I hadn't seen it until just a few years ago.
Really? Oh.
And I watched it with my sister, and I remember being like, oh, I know it's a comedy. I'd seen like bits and pieces of it. But then when you get like by the ending, you're like, I'm going to cry at this comedy movie, because I feel so connected to these characters in a way that like what's like, I'm trying to think of another comedy movie that didn't do that as successfully.
As successfully?
But I can't think of. No, that didn't do it successfully or as successfully.
I'm trying to think of that one. So, like, because the other big zombie movie that's also a comedy is Zombieland, and that is post-apocalyptic.
And that is phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
I love that. That's one of my favorite movies. But they like, and that one I think also connects you to the characters really well, because you get different personalities, and all of them are well-rounded.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think that the zombie genre has been beat to death, so you have to do something unique and something like memorable with it. And you know, I feel like that's like, I don't know, I feel like the zombie apocalypse deserves a rest.
There's this weird like rom-com zombie one that's also post-apocalyptic that
World War Z.
No.
No, not World War Z. Jesus, that is not the right one. Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies. World War Z.
Did you?
I got the "wuh" in my head.
Did you all ever see the Netflix show Daybreak?
No, I meant
No.
to.
Surprisingly good on it, in my opinion. Maybe don't judge my sensibilities if you hated it or whatever. Chat. Wow.
We're streaming on
Yes,
Twitch.
we are right now, obviously, and YouTube and all the places. Go follow us there. I guess.
I guess. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, yeah. But it's sort of a Lord of the Flies, but zombies. Like everyone is I think a high schooler.
Oh, I did
after
see
the
a couple of episodes
apocalypse.
of Daybreak. I remember that. Yeah.
Wait, I feel okay. Maybe I saw a couple of episodes of. Is that one that's also kind of comedic?
Yeah, kid's got a skateboard. He skates through the town. He's
I watched, I think, the first 3 or 4 episodes, and I really liked it, but I never finished.
There's a twist at the end that, for whatever reason, I didn't see coming, and it was welcome. Is all I'll say about that. I know we're spoiler heavy, but I won't ruin that. I was like, oh, okay, sure.
I sometimes think about that show because I remember thinking there were times where it moved really slow, but not in a way that was boring.
Yeah, I wish it had gotten a second season, but unfortunately, it's got the Netflix syndrome, and. Yeah, just very good. I think a nuclear bomb goes off in that. It kills a number of people. This is all about a small town. High schoolers, they sort of split into cliques, and the survivors are just trying to get by. It's very Mad Maxian football players. But there's also zombies. So yeah.
I would definitely 2 of my favorite pieces of zombie fiction that have come out. One is way old school. It's Land of the Dead. It was part of
I've
Romero's
seen that
Dawn
one,
of
yeah.
the Dead series.
Yeah.
And it tells the story of how society is cropped back up in the zombie apocalypse. And you get this dystopia where you have these fat cats that rule over the normal people who are just trying to get by. If you can imagine a story like that. But what's kind of coming up in the spoiler for this movie that came out 30, 40 years ago, is the zombies are getting smarter. So you have this pocket of civilization and they have their own problems, but just outside the walls you have these zombies that are starting to figure out things. They go from a toddler level intelligence at the start of the movie to reasonably able to understand cause and effect. So they're able to start waging a new war on the humans who have managed to eke out this little bit of society. Which you get this kind of new apocalypse. It's how can things get any worse? It's the zombies get smart enough to understand our defenses.
Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah, I remember my sister read a comic book that had a similar premise, but it was more the zombies start blending into society, they start actually recontributing to society again. But I
think it's
not
called
for
Fido.
the life of
There's something like that. No, Fido is when you have a zombie who's actually treated as pets.
I'd have to ask her. Hang on, I'll text her.
That's
and
really
see if she
interesting.
answers me.
Now,
was that the 2 that you wanted to bring up, Ashwood?
Oh, the other one was an anime that came out this past year, Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch.
I was about to bring that up.
That sounds funny.
I fully recommend it. It's what it follows the story of this one guy who's just been worked to the bone, and would really rather the apocalypse than going into work the next day.
Not at all relatable.
Wakes up to it. Spoilers. Wakes up to a zombie apocalypse. And it's about how he is deciding how he wants to spend his life in the zombie apocalypse, and it's by doing everything he never thought he could do when he was working a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 9, as was unfortunately his life.
Yeah.
It's very good. Very funny.
So these are the zombie ones, and those apocalypses tend to happen. Now, that's not the only apocalypse out there that you have. A couple of years ago, which unfortunately had the worst, was a movie I was wanting to see, and I eventually saw it, called it came out March 2020. If you know what happened then, you'll realize why that movie did not do well.
Some form of apocalypse, maybe?
Good. Getting borderline.
Very nearly.
From apocalyptic events, I've heard from.
Wow, getting close to the bone on this one. Anyway, but it was called Love and Monsters, and in that movie, what happens is that they send a missile out to destroy, to stop
A meteor.
a meteor. So they
I just watched this like 2 weeks ago with Leo.
So they to stop this meteor, who was to blow up this meteor. When they blew up the meteor, stuff that from the meteor fell down and mixed with a bunch of explosives that
No, it was stuff for like we had shot a bunch of rockets and stuff.
Yeah.
And stuff from the rockets, like the nuclear fuel and all that, fell back to Earth and started mutating.
It started mutating crustaceans, bugs,
just like different creatures
and cold-blooded animals too. And so, like, their apocalypse is twofold, which I thought was kind of interesting. So the problem is, well, these are now giant monsters that are running around rampant on it. You know, an ant's easy to deal with when it's not like 20 feet tall. There's a scene where they have, which I thought was interesting. It's essentially this guy who's walking past this neighbor's pool. In the pool is a frog that's been living there, but the frog is the size of a Buick, and it's trying to eat people whole.
It's a love story, and so it's a comedy, and it's kind of in the vein of Zombieland, but with monsters, and not as gory. Actually, there's not really a lot of blood, which is really I mean, like, there's still some really like creepy stuff and like some, I don't know, cartoon blood, I guess, because it's not like blood red. But I don't know. I just saw it like 2 weeks ago. I recommend it.
It's really good.
It's cute.
The thing I liked about it is, like, their biggest problem the main character explains that when he's narrating what's happened in the apocalypse. The biggest problem that they have is that they are lacking resources, but not food. That's not the problem that they really have to worry about. The real problem is they can't really defend themselves. And it's because the bigger monsters, kaiju level monsters, were all taken out by tanks and missiles and tons of firearms, which left that there was not very much ammunition and such to deal with the other monsters that are on there. So you never really see any like big giant monsters that he talks about. Well, you see like one or two, but the real reason why they're running around is because we don't have a way to take them down anymore. And it's kind of interesting because realistically, if you could do it, your biggest problem in the apocalypse in this case is survival, but your resource that they're worried about is actually raw materials and manufacturing, the ability to make something to keep that thing going.
I just looked it up. Y'all don't have frogs this big where you're at?
No.
That's Buick frogs are all over the swamps where I'm from.
And a real problem.
It's such a cute movie. It was very fun.
Y'all are built different out there.
People in Australia are like, what? This is normal for us.
I was going to bring this up during the last Australia topic, but I didn't. As a quick aside, did you know that they have a thing called democracy sausage down there?
What?
Some places, I got a buddy who lives in Australia, and some places where when you go to vote, they give you a free democracy sausage for voting. And now, far be it from me to besmirch the good name of the place that I'm from, but as the land of the free and the home of the brave, I feel like we need some goddamn democracy sausages.
Yeah, that's
my rant for the day.
Just don't ask how it's made.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't care as long as it's tasty. And then I get one for voting. Those are the 2 qualifications I have, and it's free. 3 qualifications. The 4 qualifications I have are:
I get to vote, I get to have democracy sausage,
it's tasty, and it's free.
And it's free. And also I get to have a second one later.
5. The 5. Speaking of like monster zombie adjacent post-apocalypses, I Am Legend, the novel. The movie's fine, whatever. It's whatever. I don't care. But the novel is really good if you haven't read it. Very different from the movie.
Very much so.
Different.
I've only seen the movie, and I really like the movie, so maybe I'll check out
the book's really good. But it's kind of funny because you learn about this man who's out there. He thinks he's the last surviving human, hypothetically. He's not sure. Some stuff happens. I'll leave a little bit up to the reader and or listener to go figure that out. But it ends at the very end with him assuming he's the last human. And as he's about to die, he sort of reminisces and is amused by the idea that he may be the final human and that humans are now the mythological creatures as vampires are to us.
Yeah.
That like these vampires are going to tell stories of, oh, there used to be these, or there are these things out that walk in the daytime, and it's super weird and creepy, and I don't know. I just love the juxtaposition of that, I guess.
It's amazing.
Also, a bacteria, weirdly enough, in that book.
Mhm.
Bacteria makes you a vampire, I guess.
Yeah. Also, you could have bacteria or something like that as your apocalypse, a disease apocalypse. And it's kind of interesting because that one, it follows sort of the similarities of the Black Plague. So let me take a quick brief history lesson for this.
We go Plague Inc., and you are the apocalypse.
It's me. I'm the problem.
I'm the apocalypse.
Hey, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. During the Black Plague takes out roughly about a third of Europe. Okay, not a small breach that we have on that. Now, the thing is that some people will come right out of it. They happen to survive being covered in a plague. When you have a plague like that, you end up having whatever's the results of a plague. An interesting TV show that was running around for a while, and there's like a couple of them that I like. One of them was a plague-based apocalypse called Jeremiah. It only ran for 2 seasons, or 2 or 3 seasons, I believe. Starred Luke Perry of all people into it. It's an
Hmm.
interesting show, and what it was is that a virus ran rampant throughout the planet, and it killed everybody who had hit puberty. That's what it targeted. And so the apocalypse for that one is everyone who happened to be basically 12 or 13 and under, who didn't hit puberty yet, and now they have to relearn how to survive in this world because there's no adults to teach them. And like it's a big thing at one point that one of the first things a lot of these kids try to do as sort of collectively as a society is teach everyone how to read because they
When
know that it's going to be a problem. You should teach them how to read. And one adult they find who is living in a library doesn't know how to read, and it seems to be impossible for them just
what was this
because
called?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah. Oh yeah.
hmm and they're like,
How did that dude survive?
he survived by providing books to at a library to other people because he hoarded himself up
But
in a
he
library.
reached puberty.
It only worked once. So here's why I bring up the Black Plague for this one. A lot of scholars say that one of the reasons why the Black Plague died out is because it just couldn't infect any more people. It was so rapidly taking people out that you couldn't spread this infection. Oh, it becomes a really big turning point for a lot of women in that story because basically they hit the age of 13 and now they're freaking out because they could be dead. Take that gamble, and then it turns out no, the virus has killed itself off. We're good.
Kind of similar in scope. There's a 1975 novel by O.T. Nelson called
Mhm.
"The Girl Who Owned a City." Very similar premise. Anyone above the age of 12 or 13 perishes. Children inherit the earth and have to, or some attempt to, kind of reconstruct what they had at some point.
Mhm.
And then others, of course, go full feral and try to
Yeah.
take what other people have built. So I think it's very interesting that there is this sort of like subgenre
Mhm.
of post-apocalyptic fiction in which children are the protagonists and they inherit the earth. There are no adults, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Let's see where this goes. Another one that I really liked, which was ironically a comedy, it was pretty fun, but very, very depressing in some cases, is called The Last Man on Earth. It's starring Will Forte. And what happens is that's him. He's the last man on Earth. Honestly, I love the first episode because he lives in Tucson, Arizona, which is globally thinking that's living in the middle of a desert is not the best place you want to be post-apocalyptic.
What?
And so he gets lonely and he decides to leave, starts going across the United States to try to see if he can find anybody out there. But his hometown is Tucson, Arizona. So when he goes from one place to another, before he leaves this next town, he writes in spray paint on the sign, gone to Tucson, Arizona. And he spends the entire first episode, it's done with him. That's it. Forte is the only character, and it's about like the months and the years that he spends by himself in Tucson, Arizona, until he eventually drives himself because humans are naturally social creatures. Without anyone else out there, he starts running into a huge amount of depression for that until somebody happened to see his sign, and now there's more to now he's no longer the last person on Earth. But he is not the best to be prepared for this. Like, he just does a bunch of weird decisions. Like, he never even bothers to think about making fresh food because he just keeps going down to the grocery store. They find at some point a guy who's is ex-military there who used to work as an engineering corps, and he keeps trying to tell everybody they need to ration gas, and they keep not doing it. And at that point, it's been 3 or 4 years in the apocalypse, and so gas is becoming kind of muddy because gas rots after so much time.
I have a different kind of post-apocalypse. It's a short story, and it is a post-apocalypse at the hands of sentient AIs. I have no mouth and I must scream.
Mhm.
Yes.
So that the short story, and there was a game that was based off of it, but like very loosely. But I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a short story by Harlan Ellison. You can find it's like public domain at this point. I definitely recommend it if you can handle it. It's pretty
intense.
messed up. It's pretty intense and pretty messed up. So I won't get into like the triggery things, but it was written in 1967, and they were like China and Russia and the United States and Asia or Europe. You know, everybody wanted to build these supercomputers that could go to war for us.
Mm-hmm.
And basically like give us better strategizing and like ways to do things. And these computers kept like trying to one up each other, and eventually they hit sentience, and we're like, I don't need people anymore. And so they destroyed there's one supercomputer. Oh my god, what is its name?
It's not HAL.
Is
That's a
it
different thing.
AI? I think it might just be called AI.
It looks like it's called AM.
AM, that's it.
It's a morning computer.
Yeah. So it actually like basically it destroys all of humanity and then cannibalizes the other like supercomputers until it's the only computer left. But now it's like bored and like doesn't know what to do because it's like, well, now there's nothing left but me. So it finds the last like 5 people that it can and traps them and basically makes them immortal and completely like so one of the guys was like a brilliant like scientist of some sort, and AM turned him into basically a Neanderthal. He had no intelligence anymore, and so it's like tragic because he was someone so incredible and so smart, and that was all taken away from him. And there's one girl who was given just like stellar beautiful looks, and she's also very intelligent, but the only thing that people find like use for her is to have sex with her because they're the only people left. And I think one of them ends up like or 2 of them end up turning to sodomy after a while because they're just like, we gotta like we need to get ourselves off somehow. And so like, and it's just very, I think there's like 5 people, and you learn their backstories, and no matter what they do, they cannot die because AM won't let them.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up like trying to trick AM into letting them kill themselves and each other. So it becomes like a mass murder suicide event. But the one person who survives gets turned into a boneless blob.
Mm-hmm.
Who has no choice but to like sit there bored and alone and at the eternal mercy of this sadistic computer because they helped the others die so that they could escape and basically sacrifice themselves to be like, I'll live forever so you guys can die. It's so tragic and it's so upsetting. but it's a very interesting read, and even knowing the ending, I definitely recommend reading
Oh
it
yeah.
anyway. I just
Um,
gave you all the ending.
there is in this sort of case with you have AI as your apocalyptic event, would you count the Terminator series on that?
I really wanted
Because
to bring that up.
yeah, because technically speaking, yes, the apocalypse happens and it's from Skynet on there. And the weird part is depending on which movie, and by the way, by when I say which movie, let's stick with the first two, they're the good ones.
But
There's
aren't
The
other
they
only
movies in
ones.
that.
aren't they
Uh
There's the only ones I've seen.
pre-apocalyptic technically?
this is a pre-apocalypse. Well, yeah. Um
Most stories are.
so it's kind of interesting because in the first movie, the AI has already taken over the world. Everyone is and they're doing the apocalypse and the rebels are winning. That's the part people forget. They managed to actually rise up, and thanks to John Connor, is going in there. And I'm not going to go into the details of how the John Connor and timeline. That's a whole time travel episode I'm working on, and that's a mess.
How do you have a repeating event if the first event, like,
It's a
there's got
bootstrap
to be a
event, and I'll explain what that
there's
is
got to
later.
be a timeline where he didn't go back in time, but if he never went back in time, that can never have been born. How do we have this? It's what we call a plot hole.
He's his own grandfather, pretty sure.
For the time
Oh.
travel episode, we start in the middle of recording and then you just go through, and we at the very end we'll shoot to the beginning
We'll just
and then go
Tarantino
through
it.
it again.
We'll just Tarantino
I
it.
love that.
I'm here for it. That sounds
If I can
amazing.
figure out a way, I'll do that. Actually, maybe I'm working on that one.
Just as soon as you hit record, we'll all be mid conversation. And then you'll go like record stop and be like, I bet you're wondering how we got here.
Yep, that's me.
Yep, that's me hosting this podcast. I'm pretty sure you're wondering how we got to this part out of this chapter.
Explain that.
Yeah. But no, okay, so like in the first movie, in Terminator, like John Connor makes it a point to let him know, yeah, we're winning the war. The whole reason time travel even exists is because the AI got desperate and couldn't figure out a way how to win. And so the only way it could win is to take a player out of the game, which is to remove John Connor. And the best way to do that is to go back in time and remove his mother. Remember, at this point in time, all the AI knows is that John Connor's mother is Sarah Connor. Which Sarah Connor? Oh.
Well, he goes to the phone book and he kills all of them until he finds out.
Man.
One of them's got to be it.
How, if he started at the bottom, worked his way up, you know how rough that would be for that movie? But yeah, so like, I think Ashwin's on the same point with it. It is still an apocalypse. An apocalyptic event happens, and it's all around the AI for it. In Terminator 2, the AI gets kind of smarter because the AI managed to get started earlier because of the events that happened in the first movie.
Yeah, they find the hand. They find the hand in the processor.
In the processor, yeah. And so that's what led it to Skynet starts earlier now, and now Skynet is winning the war at the end. So you're kind of, and the only thing that John Connor knows, which happens before the fourth movie, John Connor's the only person who shouldn't be going back in time. Because he knows that at where he is, he's needed to stop Skynet. And so your apocalyptic event is all pretty much under against one guy who is the Messiah.
That's the guy you never want to take on.
Yeah, the Messiah soldier. And the only and it's hilarious because the only reason he does as well as he does is because he has notes from Sarah Connor, who started making notes when Kyle Reese goes back in time to do that. It's a mess, but. And I have my weird working theory for it. However, that is an AI apocalypse. You just don't deal with the post-apocalypse side. You deal with the pre-apocalypse for him. But whatever happens, your resolution is: does the apocalypse still happen? And do you still have that apocalypse? I say yes. Depending on which one of these that you're going with, I say yes.
Sometimes it do, sometimes it don't.
Sometimes it do. Yeah. So we're talking about the zombie apocalypse. We're talking about nuclear apocalypse, an AI apocalypse, viral apocalypse. Which is funny because, like, in the case for a viral apocalypse, like Last Man Standing, there's no real problems. Resources, plenty of them. Food, yeah, they're all in themselves. There's nobody else to eat them. The real problem in that is You're just the last person there. If you go down, that's it. It's all over.
We have talked a lot about different apocalypses, but I think we're missing one very important one.
What?
Is it the water world with water?
No, that's good. That's a good one too. No, it's the ape apocalypse.
Oh yeah,
Apocalypse.
You
The
blew it up,
you blew it up.
you manimals.
You manimals.
Another good one for the time travel
Yeah.
episode as well.
Also true.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I know that time travel is not the topic of today's, but
Mm-mm.
do you know what we cannot talk about without talking about time travel? Or we have to talk about when it comes to time travel? Futurama.
I already made a reference to it
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah.
I know.
Futurama is going to come up in that time travel episode, also in how to prevent an apocalypse. That's a episode I'm working on later for that. Because no one stops apocalypses like Fry. He's done it at least 4 times.
Starts him and he stops him. He's good at both.
He's good at both.
He's a multi-talented king.
But no, what Dane's hinting at towards the ape apocalypse would be the Planet of the Apes. And if you think Planet of the Apes it doesn't deserve it, there's the Planet of the Apes in the 60s, in the 70s, the 90s, I think had a Planet of the Apes. Also,
think
Oh
so.
yeah,
2000s.
the 90s had a whole series.
Mhm.
Oh, I think I saw the early 2000s Planet of the Apes in theaters.
Yeah,
With
and
my friend when I was very young.
I'm blanking on the name
Very
of the
young.
director, but he's the one who does like Sweeney Todd and all the
Oh, Tim
Uh,
Burton.
Tim Burton did
Tim
the-
Burton.
the-
I think
yeah.
Tim Burton has a series of Planet of the Apes movies.
There's a series of Planet of the Apes movies that spawned off of the Tim Burton version of the Planet of the Apes movies. That's the new version of it. So
Okay.
they're all based around the one that he made first, which in turn is based around the original Planet of the Apes movies that came out for that. So what you have with those Planet of the Apes on that is essentially another species that comes up that rises above and manages to beat out humans. So this is kind of a unique type of apocalypse because that's the apocalypse is essentially at first they didn't take the apes seriously when they started speed evolving, and now the apes managed to take over, and now it's kind of too late. And the human species as a species are going extinct. But for the apes, they don't care. Apes are
stronger
stronger
together.
And-
The apes were like benefiting from humans. Like, I mean, they were keeping humans as slaves and stuff.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter to them if they're gone.
Yeah.
Um,
They're like, we could do this if we wanted to.
But yeah, so the apes take over, and that's your and that's your apocalypse. Is the apes are taking over? You didn't see that one coming.
Can you imagine? You've got zombies, you've got dragons, you've got bacterial, and it's apes.
Apes.
Turns out it's apes. Ah, man.
Didn't see the ape one coming.
Didn't
That's
have that
me.
one on the bingo card. Yeah.
Apes all the way down.
It's apes all the way down.
I was pretty certain my vote was on the AI, but no, apes.
Yeah.
Apes was the way to go.
I guess, yeah, apes. Who knew?
I believe there's some kaiju based apocalypses too.
Ooh. Pacific Rim is a
Pacific Rim
kaiju-based
is
apocalypse.
Good call out.
Mhm.
God, that movie's so good.
Yeah. What do you count it as a post-apocalyptic? Because they kind of stopped that at the end of the first movie, but then they come back. So
Is there a term for like mid-apocalyptic? You've never seen it, Liz? It's awesome.
It's very fun. It's
It's
big robot
awesome.
punching fun.
I've only heard good things.
It's awesome.
I would definitely qualify it as an apocalypse because you have this apocalyptic event, which is the Marianas Trench. Or is it? It's this big rift opens up in the middle of the ocean, and so you have all these kaiju start showing up, and so humanity is pushed inland. They can't be near any water sources because at any moment a kaiju could just come up and rampage through your city.
right, because it
So
took
you-
them almost a week and a half of nonstop barrage in order to stop one, and it was like the bottom tier of those guys.
I think I agree
Exactly.
with Ashwood in
Yeah.
that, like, it is an apocalyptic event because, I would say post-apocalyptic too, because we see modern day, we'll put it that in quotes, where the first kaiju comes out, but then when the film takes place, it's future day, right? It's in after the first kaiju
Yeah, okay,
exists.
I gotcha.
And society is shifted purely to trying to stop these monsters. Like, it seems like everyone in the world is like, I'm working as a mechanic, I'm welding things, we're designing better robots. You don't really see anyone like farming or hanging out or reading or whatever. They're all focused on, if we don't stop these monsters, we're dead, kind of deal. Definitely feels apocalyptic to me.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, I'm pretty certain that there's a kaiju apocalypse. There's also a couple of other apocalypses that I think those are the big ones. Flooding is a good apocalypse for that. And that's the you remove landmass for a while. It worked for Waterworld. Whether or not it was a good movie, that's on you.
It's a great movie.
I've never seen it.
Land is not a myth. I've seen it.
It's a movie.
I've heard it's not good, Dane, but I trust you.
Oh, I mean, so it's got some charm to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the best film I've ever seen, but it has some charm to it. I mean, Kevin Costner does a good job in it.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper. I think if my memory serves, I think there's a really young Jack Black in there.
Yes, I believe so. On that.
Like, it's a, if you've seen the rest of the Mad Max films, if you've seen Beyond Thunderdome,
pun intended.
Yeah, Waterworld.
I would not go as far as The Postman. That was not nearly as good.
No.
And that's saying something, because Waterworld is not nearly as good.
Would you say, Leo, that The Postman did not deliver?
Yeah. Oh, I think it was The Simpsons. I love the joke about that. There's like they were watching The Postman with commentary from Kevin Costner, and Kevin Costner's just on the side going, I'm sorry for this. I'm really sorry about this. But yeah, so you can have various other apocalypses. So an interesting post-apocalyptic that I bumped into because of a game that I don't think actually two games that I can think of that have this as a post-apocalyptic scenario, and one cartoon, Magic, as a post-apocalyptic event. Oh, two cartoons. So a big one in that is Adventure Time, is a post-apocalyptic story, and from what I understand, they make it starts with a large atomic bomb that's also seeded with magic that got glued together, and it made a horrible mess. And from what I understand, that's where the Lich might come from, the big bad, one of the big bads in that series. But yeah, rips the tears, and to the point that our main character Finn, for the most part, thinks he's the last human on Earth. And I love that his adopted dad, basically, Jake's dad, is just, I hunt monsters. That's what I do for a living. And he treats it like a very 9-to-5 thing.
Oh yeah, it's all business.
Yeah.
It's all business.
Love Adventure Time.
Adventure Time is awesome for that. I also love that Adventure Time, the story, much like the character, grows up. So it gets better as you go when he's having to grow up and having to deal with real things.
Yeah.
But like, because the magic rift happens, other things start popping up. Vampires didn't used to be a problem. Now we have vampires. I find it weird that candy is a type of magic. I didn't write this one. That's on. You could use fire, ice, and candy.
Yeah. What do you think Heart was with Captain Planet, Leo?
Well, apparently filled with
candy.
Sugar. It's candy. Another one is that there's this. It was a very interesting indie game developed for that I've got on Steam. I wish I could remember what it's called, but essentially it was the apocalypse for it happens to be just magic just enters the world and demons start pouring out and running rampant, and you and a couple of guys who happen to be out camping basically has to try to rebuild society by hanging out in the forest and hoping nobody goes in there to get and you have to, the biggest thing about that is you basically have to relearn how magic works so you can do stuff to defend against that. But the apocalypse is because magic is now a thing and we weren't ready for that.
That's how we get demons. Always practice safe spellcasting.
That's how we get demons.
It is. You have to practice safe spellcasting, folks. I've been saying it forever.
He
Lay
did.
your wards and abjuration down.
Seriously, make sure you got your scrolls ready at hand.
Yeah. Don't.
I trust Dane with my life.
Did you ever watch
Oh.
Aladdin the animated series when it was around? It
Yeah.
was back in the 90s.
Yes.
I love it because like the genie is dealing with a demon, and he just for one episode when he's trying to deal with his demon while Aladdin's away, he looks straight into the camera and goes, "Folks, don't mess with evil incarnate. You can it only hurts when you do that."
That's good advice. You know,
Like
I do
that's your
find it,
PSA for that.
I do find it a little bit
Stick to
funny that
store-bought
like
evil.
the genie is shown as all powerful in the first Aladdin movie, and then every other property that has Aladdin and the genie in it
Mm.
is been like, oh well, except for this and this and that and this other thing, and like he's just kind of like a more powerful guy. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, you could have your apocalypse that way for it as magic as your thing. A fighting game, oddly enough, that was the big feature in it was Guilty Gear. The Guilty Gear series starts with them figuring out magic sometime in the early 2000s. Unfortunately, it had a bunch of mixed results and is played havoc with the natural order of physics because of that. And that's where half the problems coming from is that this thing plays havoc with that. And so like there's what is it? Magic racked Japan so bad that the Japanese as a people are an endangered species in that storyline.
I did not know that that was an apocalyptic story, but it would have to be if your character's name is Soul Bad Guy.
Oh yeah.
That is like the only way that flies, right?
Mhm.
Can you imagine like, hey man, what's your name? Oh, I'm Soul. Oh, cool, Soul. Nice to meet you. Soul Bad Guy.
I would like to not be friends with you
Yeah,
anymore.
I'm gonna go.
My mom's calling me.
My
What's that,
name is
Ma?
Richard McEvil.
Also known as Dick.
Mhm.
I'm a dick.
Dick McEvil.
But yeah, so you have your apocalypse from magic, and that's how that storyline works out. Like things start popping up from magical stories and such just randomly. There's dragons now. That didn't used to be a problem, but now there is. Soul Bad Guy. Actually, the two oldest characters, if I remember my canon for that right, the two oldest characters are Soul Bad Guy, who used to be a guy who happened to be near when the event happened, and so becomes technically immortal. But he's from the 90s, which is also why he looks like 90s grunge, like that 90s. I would love to say 90s grunge, but I'll be honest, he looks like a 90s raver with that giant hair of his. And Axel Lowe, who is a time traveler by accident.
Every time you say Soul Bad Guy, I just can't help but laugh.
It's
Soul Bad
great.
Guy.
Well, like this is the same game where like Kai Kisuke is another character who's kind of one of the foils to Soul Bad Guy.
Mhm.
And it's spelled KY, which once again, post-apocalyptic, you're just making stuff up.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Soul Bad Guy is my favorite character. I've decided right now.
Soul
He
Bad
looks
Guy's great.
so rad. I love his like belted loincloth, his belt that says free.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he's my favorite character. I have decided to start obsessing over him specifically.
And this is the
right
same
now.
game where you've got like samurai and shadow puppets and angels and a yo-yo wielding schoolgirl nun, school guy nun, Bridget.
Bridget, a yo-yo wielding transgender school. Yeah, that's the one. That's Bridget.
Yeah, Bridget's
Yeah.
amazing. Like it's such a wild concept because like other fighting games and other apocalypses make a semblance more sense, but this was just them being like magic's a thing, go nuts. Like we got robots, we got Soul Bad Guy, we got angels, we got demons.
I'm trying to remember. Is it Kai Kisuke I'm thinking of? No, it's not Korodoberi Jam. It's the guy who's a ninja with a blade on his arm.
Oh,
The names escapes me.
is that Chip?
Chip. Oh yeah,
I
it's
think
Chip. It's Chip. I love it because his origin story is so dumb. He is literally a weeaboo. That is it.
Same though.
He's a
Yes,
weeaboo.
yes.
He's like, I like ninja stuff. I'm gonna be a ninja.
I mean, I
He
gotta
knows
say,
who and what he is.
if I lived in a post-apocalyptic world where magic was real, I mean, same though.
At that point, lean into it. Be the ninja that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Oh. I just remember
Frickin-
using him when I first started playing the game because I could button mash because he's just so fast nobody will see it. That's just
Leo Whitefang, who's a guy but who absolutely looks like he should be a lion.
exactly. I'm
Maybe
not
I'm
a
a
lion.
lion.
Has a giant mane. I'm not a lion. You
Yeah.
literally have fangs. But yeah, so there's your magic as your post-apocalypse scenario, and it's just sort of how you deal with this sort of situation on that.
So if you like superhero fiction, Brandon Sanderson actually has a post-apocalyptic series of the same kind of vein. It's the Steelheart series, the Reckoner series,
Mhm.
where just out of nowhere, people start to develop superpowers, but almost universally they are supervillains. The kind of power corrupts.
Mhm.
Ultimate power corrupts ultimately type
Absolute
deal.
power eclipse absolutely is the
Yes,
I
thank you
love
for
Brandon
term.
Sanderson.
They're gonna get me in the comments. But yeah, they had basically they start developing superpowers, and so you have society collapse because all of these superpowered people go unchecked, and they're just going off of their id, whatever they want.
Mhm.
And it follows a series of the Reckoners who are trying to stop these super villains. But it is full post-apocalypse. Like, I think Atlanta gets swallowed up by a giant ocean because one of the supervillains controls water, and she wanted to control Atlanta, so she drowns Atlanta.
Mhm.
Um,
Wait,
and so you
Atlanta,
have
Georgia?
Checks out.
yeah. She's I could be getting it wrong. It's been a few years since I read the series, but it's basically like you have these pockets of places that have been taken over by supervillains.
Mhm.
And it's a really fun read.
I love Sanderson, so I will check those out.
An interesting kind of recent post-apocalypse series that came out, Twisted Metal, was post-apocalyptic.
Oh yeah, the original less so, but the show.
I need to watch that still.
The original less so, but honestly, this makes crazy people driving cars around with weapons a lot more feasible.
I absolutely buy a clown in an ice cream truck in a post-apocalypse way more than I do
Mhm.
modern day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a serial killer. He's a clown. All right, you got me there in an ice cream truck. That's where you lose me.
He's also got a rocket launcher. Like,
Not sure. Fear.
Oh,
it's post-apocalyptic. Oh, I'm back in.
yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. I mean,
No, now I get it. Yeah,
who
that just
hasn't-
happens.
Who hasn't been there?
And I love that you follow the main character in there is basically John Doe. That's his literal name. Like, man, you can. That's a you can anybody could insert themselves if you wanted to. That's the whole job. And if you've ever played any of the Twisted, like I love the Twisted Metal series. I'm looking super forward to season 2 on that, where they actually have the tournament. That's season 2 is the Twisted Metal tournament. But you also have a character like Calypso, who is basically a godlike figure. I'll give you whatever you want, patent pending for what that is. Oh man. But yeah, the Twisted Metal as a series is post-apocalyptic. And their whole the apocalypse is mostly because you have cities that bear themselves up, and everyone else is tossed out into the wastelands and the roadworks of the city. Something happened post-apocalyptically, but they never specify what it is. Like a bunch of other stuff happened on it. Technically speaking, Cowboy Bebop is a post-apocalyptic series. The moon falls apart.
I've been trying not to bring it up.
Dane, bring everything up.
I bet like every episode's going to be a Cowboy Bebop episode.
Listen, do you know what? Every episode could be an Alan Wake episode if I try hard enough. So do
Right.
it.
Not this one. There's no post-apocalyptic with Alan Wake.
I mean,
Um,
parts of Control, kind of.
Control, I can't help
parts
you
of
with that.
Control, kind of a little bit, but I mean, if you want to think about it, there are aspects of post-apocalypses to Alan's creations that come to life only to die in dreams.
Leo, have you read all of Alan Wake's books? How do you know there's not a post-apocalypse in one of them?
Yeah.
Isn't most of them are crime novels?
Yeah, post-apocalyptic crime novels. Obviously, it's not. It's not.
Don't
Listeners, it's not actually that.
It's not.
But if you want that,
we can't get started, or I will
maybe,
not.
but it's
but
not.
maybe.
I will not shut up about Alan Wake, so we should stop
Yeah,
now.
no, Bebop absolutely is, and I find a lot of
Mhm.
these like space anime from the '90s kind of are as well, right?
Yeah.
Trigun,
Outlaw Star.
similar. Outlaw Star, similar. Gundam, some Gundams kind of similar, though that's less post-apocalyptic in some cases. Although the moon's a casualty in a lot of sci-fi anime from the
Yeah.
'90s and early 2000s.
You know what? The moon can die.
Would you
The
miss
moon
it?
takes a hit.
Literally.
In fact, maybe the moon should die.
I wouldn't go that
I
far.
love the moon. I
Yeah.
love the moon.
I mean, I'd fight the sun over the moon, but
Mhm.
that's just me.
But the sun's so much bigger.
I know, but it's such a bastard, man.
So you're probably wondering what we're gonna have with this. So, like, here's the thing: this is a case of a post-apocalyptic where it's so bad you just leave. Gotta leave. So by that vein, I would stake Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a post-apocalyptic.
I mean, that's not that's not a oh, it's so bad I gotta leave. It's
It's
so bad I have to leave.
leave.
I have no choice but to leave. And literally the only reason that Trillian and Arthur survive is because they happen to have been aboard. Well, Trillian happened to have been aboard a ship with Zaphod,
Yeah.
and Arthur got taken by Ford.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, Trillian didn't know that it happened until she met back up with Arthur, and then Arthur didn't know it was gonna happen until he was already off the planet with Ford. So that's not even that was an I had no choice but to leave, but it was like I had no choice but to leave because I didn't know it was happening.
I didn't realize this until I went through my collection in Steam, just how many city builder games I have that start with "It's the apocalypse." It's a lot. It's like I've got like 10 or so on there, and like 2 of them I keep confusing for each other. Surviving the Aftermath is a fun one. Also Cold as your apocalypse, because I have a city builder, Zombie Hand gifted it to me, called Frostpunk, and that's how that works.
Oh, there's also I haven't played enough of it to say if it's an actual apocalypse or what, but the Pale Beyond is another like frozen over kind of cold.
Before I forget, the one cartoon that I have to backtrack was in the early 80s, late 70s. Thundar the Barbarian. That's a post-apocalyptic story.
His name's Conan.
No, Thundar. There actually is a Thundar the Barbarian.
No,
although it's based on Conan,
being...
let's face it. Even technically Conan in one of the Conan cartoons is a post-apocalyptic story. It's kind of messy.
They're obviously legally distinct.
Wink.
They're legally distinct. Well, he's got a loincloth, and a sidekick that doesn't say words, and 2 jellos. Thundar the Barbarian was a weird cartoon.
Really was.
And this isn't even the weirdest post-apocalyptic 80s cartoon you can bump into. There's one that has to deal with, like, I'm trying to remember its name, but insects become get hybrid evolved with humans during a post-apocalyptic event. Insectoids or something like that.
Don't know that one.
Yeah, I saw the toy for it. I did not see the cartoon series.
That's
and both
wild.
of them went down hard. And remember, this is the era that gave you Space Texas.
Well, yeah, everything's bigger in Space Texas.
Oh, and 3030, a horse that is both anthropomorphic and not when it feels like it. That's like the most confusing part of that whole thing. So yeah, Stray is a post-apocalyptic storyline.
Yeah.
Wait, I haven't finished it yet.
There was an apocalypse.
Play a cat.
You do play a cat. It's great.
Yeah, but that cat can like figure out platforming, so I posit that he's not a real orange cat.
Well, or conversely, what if he is as the only orange cat we see, always has the brain cell?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say. So Phoenix, my orange cat, I used to joke that he got his second brain cell for his birthday. But then I woke up one night and he was just sitting in front of the litter box after Ashley had used it, just like with his face inside of it, like huffing poo. And I was like, well, the methane just destroyed that brain cell.
He done got hooked on the Jankum.
The Jankum juice.
Pets are wild.
That's an art I'm not doing.
So yeah, you can have different types of post-apocalyptic stories as long as you have a post-apocalyptic thing. Now, in fact, you can get some weirder ones. Bastion is a post-apocalyptic story,
True.
which I love for the narration because that's 90% of the game is narration on that. You can have basically you just need an event, something to trigger everything to that it ends and what happens afterwards. So the main reason why we bring this up, why do we keep talking about post-apocalyptic stories? Here's sort of the gist of that. Post-apocalyptic stories, in some cases, like, allow you to explore the human condition differently by putting them in a scenario where things are lost. Like, no joke, one of my favorite things in a post-apocalyptic story is where they have to get something from the past that is kind of what we think of currently as like antique or in the past, and it becomes incredibly useful.
Ham radios.
Manual pumps, or the historian guy with me loves it when you also have people who have this weird awkward skill in the modern era, which is kind of useless until this happens, and now you need it. Like, what is it? Black powder somebody who worked at a Renaissance fair and that just messes with black powder weapons just for funsies. Oh no, an EMP breaks out and destroys everything. Well, now he's the only one that knows how to make a fire or a proper firearm. Or swords and bows coming back in fashion on that. Or my personal favorite is when someone has like, yeah, for a hobby, I just mess with a sextant. Now you're the only guy who knows how to make a map.
I think everybody though will have like some kind of skill in but any kind of apocalypse. Because like as much as I'm always like, man, I would be useless in an apocalypse. Like I can do basic sewing. Even if it grosses me out, I could stitch wounds together.
Yeah.
Like I know how to do that basic thing. I could be a halfway decent like medic of some sort, you know. I know I can stitch wounds. I know various antiseptics, things like that. Like I could be some like kind of useful in an apocalypse.
Yeah, you'll be surprised what you need to do. Like
Yeah.
what? Oh, that's weird episode of Farscape when John Crichton is like, okay, whatever I'm going to do is going to knock myself out, and it will probably stop my heart. And everybody around him is like, yeah, so we'll just put you in that machine. Well, what if the machine doesn't work? It'll always work. But what if it doesn't work? It'll always work. You know what? Let me teach you CPR real quick.
Yeah.
Do something on that.
Oh, I do know CPR. Chest compressions, chest compressions, chest compressions.
Mm-hmm.
What is
Even better
everyone's
for my-
apocalypse skill?
Mine would probably be I can fix clothes. Maybe not more intricate clothes, but I can like do hems and patches, which means I could also blanket stitch a wound shut.
Very important.
I know a blanket stitch. I could help disinfect. I mean, and then there's also things like boiling rainwater to get pure water.
Water purification.
And then
I
also
can do some
being
gardening.
able to. I need somebody who can start a fire.
Oh, I can do
so
that.
So that I can boil the water, which we can use to wash the bandages that I'm going to put on those wounds. Who knew I was going to become a post-apocalyptic medic? I also I'm not super great at it, but I like gardening. So I could get...
I was a chef for 10 years, so I would be the cook. I would be like the little cookie in the back, covered in the little splotched apron. It's like, yeah, come get your slop.
I don't know why, Ash, but I just imagine you chain smoking. I know this is post-apocalyptic, so cigarettes are probably hard to get, but when I think of like greasy spoon chefs, I just no hairnet, chain smoking.
I thought we were out of cigarettes. No, he just keeps finding them.
I'm gonna learn to grow the nicotine so that Ashwood can take up chain smoking.
There you go.
There's no health inspectors in the apocalypse.
That's true.
That's the only difference.
This tastes funny. Eat it.
Yeah, you like it. How about you, Leo?
I've done a lot of cooking and landscape work and carpentry and such, so I could put a couple of things together. They're not going to be great, but it'll get the job done.
Hey, I can help build a fence that will keep the zombies out.
Yeah, we can all put that. Now, if they come up, just remember, you just turn over to them and you just go, hey, knock it off.
Stop it.
Go on, get.
Stop it. It's always the funny thing that that people forget. Like you'll hear people always be talking about how badass they are, and they just describe all their combat skills and things. And I was there going, "What about if you when food runs out? Well, I'm just gonna go for a raid." No, no, no. That's not a permanent plan. That's not a plan, actually.
Yeah, eventually stores are gonna not have anything left to pillage, and
You gotta come up with a better idea than that. Like, I'm not a great gardener, but I can garden and I have raised my own plants before. You'll be surprised how well it will work when you need food.
we like in the society that
Mhm.
we're gonna build, we would need people who are good with guns and are like sharp shots and whatever, if that's the kind of apocalypse that we have, is
Oh,
one
yeah.
that needs firearms and stuff. But that can't be your sole skill. Like,
Yeah, if
what
this
else
is
do
going
you
to be
do?
about like monsters running around, yeah, now we have a bigger problem with it. But if it's like nothing is around, there's just society collapses, eh?
If it's a cold apocalypse, just leave me to die.
I'm
I
just
don't
gonna
like it.
If it's an AI apocalypse, people who have knowledge on computers is going to be very valuable.
I will be besties with the AI just so it spares us. Just so it spares us, Dean. Not to...
It won't, though.
I'll try.
It doesn't need us.
Once it figures that out, you're kind of boned.
Yeah.
Who's gonna upgrade its RAM, Dane?
Itself. It's going to build its own RAM. With hookers and blackjack. You know what? Screw the RAM. Yeah, have you guys ever? Let's see if this rings true to anyone listening or anyone in this room. Have you ever like heard a bunch of really cool, talented people all talk about skills that they have and that they would use in an apocalypse, and then hypothetically have had the thought of, "Oh God, I've put my stats in the wrong place on my character sheet." Just asking for a friend.
I'm not saying I'm the
It's
one
not
who's
me.
doing
No,
No.
no, I.
No,
but
Dan,
like
I'm
anyone.
from my experience, I'm not saying that I'm the one who has said that and regretted where my stats have gone.
Sure.
Realized that that I probably should have put more into my survival skills and less into 1980s pop music.
Yeah. Yep.
That was me.
So I can cook okay, right?
Yep.
Provided I have the ingredients. I can put seeds and things in ground and water them to food on occasion. But I would not say I'm overtly skilled in either of those two areas. So please take me with you when the apocalypse happens.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be relying on all of you. Now, if you need someone, I mean, I'm pretty okay with a gun. I'm pretty okay with a bow. Like I have martial skills that I can bring. But as Liz said, they're not as important. So carry me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was fair.
Being perfectly honest, I feel like I would flounder in an apocalypse and that my skills are only going to take me so far.
I will say I'm going to die first because someone's going to make a mistake and I'm going to go back after them.
I'm sorry.
Going to happen.
It's going to be me.
Maybe, but like
it's going to be me.
And I don't know if this is like, my own weird apocalyptic fantasy or whatnot, but like in my head, that person lives and I die. Like I'm not making it out of that. I'm sacrificing myself. There's zombies coming up the stairs, and I'm gonna hold the line. I'm gonna Hodor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They fall down, and the zombie Wolverines go directly over their head, straight into Dane.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
I don't want you to die in the apocalypse.
I mean, for the record, I don't either.
Yeah,
but I'm willing to if it means one of you all gets out.
I'll be sitting there stitching your wound. I'll be cross-stitching your wound shut. Like, we've got to save him, and you now have Cloud on your side.
Yeah. That's what replaces tattooing.
I feel like I could do okay, but I'm the idiot who instead of leveling up to level 2 or 3, got to level 2 and recycled those points, and now I've got 1 point in like every stat that I need ever.
Hey, that's important.
If you need someone to talk about, morality or philosophy, or if you can find me something that spins really fast and we can put wet clay on it, I can make mugs and bowls and plates. I can do that.
Also, if we need some really good storytelling to break up the utter boredom,
I've got that on lock.
We need storytellers, especially in the post-apocalypse, because we're gonna need people to recount what life was like and tell the story of Mad Max or Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's
You'll be
true.
surprised how useful just simply morale will get there. I haven't seen many of them, but I've only found one game that actually has deals with the post-apocalyptic. It's a zombie-based game called Dead State, but
Hmm.
it's the only one I know of that
Hmm.
morale is the key thing you need in that thing. And if morale drops, you lose. That is it.
Interesting.
Can I tell a story about Dead State?
Sure,
Yep.
real quick.
So Leo bought Dead State for me years ago because he really liked it and was like, I think you'll really enjoy this. And so I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And so I fired up the old PC, real proud of my computer, and I was like, okay, let's go. And so I turned the game on, and my mouse like does this.
It just moves
And so
slightly
I'm
to
like,
the right.
no, not even slightly. It kept going. And so I was like, yeah, my mouse. Oh yeah, sorry, people can't see it. My mouse would start at like wherever, like in the middle of the screen, and just move to the side, all the way over. So then I would take my mouse, I'd move it back over, and it would just keep doing that. Like I would set my mouse down, and it would just go like this. I couldn't press the play button because every time I got my mouse back to the play button, by the time I was trying to click, it was moving off. It wasn't like a slow thing. My mouse just lived on the right side of the screen during that game.
Were
That was
you
it.
sitting on a controller? Because I have done that.
No, I didn't have a controller plugged in.
Weird.
In a reference to the old console wars episode, that was a problem with the N64. If you left the controller edge just move slightly to the left, it'll get stuck that way because it reads that as default. And you'd have to reset your whole system in order to get that to fix it.
Yep.
Wow. That's
Although,
what caused it.
Mystery
Dana,
Everything's making
solved.
sense now.
Dane, I have had that happen though, where I was like I would press my start menu and it would just start scrolling down it, and I was like, "What is it doing that?" And realized my controller plugged in and something had nudged the
Yep.
joystick down.
More likely than you'd think.
Yeah. But yeah, I believe this is about it for your post-apocalyptic episode for it. So if you want a post-apocalyptic story, first off, figure out what apocalypse you want to deal with, and then how people deal with it. It doesn't have to be the main thing, but it has to be a consistent antagonist to your main characters. It has to be something that, because once that consistency goes away, it's no longer a post-apocalypse.
Ooh, can I bring up an example?
Yes.
The Resident Evil movies, specifically the live action ones with Mila Jovovich, because those ones, and I'm gonna say it, I really like the first two. I think that those ones are actually really fun. The third one tries to be Mad Max. It really wanted to be Mad Max, and then, but by the time you hit like the fourth movie, they start retconning all of the stuff until by the end of the start of the last movie. I remember me and a previous roommate of mine were going through it, and I was like, listen, they've retconned everything up to this point. Just let us have the Red Queen from the first movie. And then they retconned the Red Queen in the first 10 minutes of the last movie. To the point where if you watch the first movie and then the last movie, you would have, outside of Mila Jovovich, you'd have no idea that they were part of the same universe, even. And that's just not a good way to do it, because literally nothing is the same between the two. And that makes it not fun. Like, some of them are dumb fun. I think it's the fifth one. The one that's... There's one of them that's just like... It's just like dumb fun. It has really fun action. The story's stupid. Whatever. But like, the fact that they continuously just retcon everything makes it not a fun apocalypse anymore.
God, I hate it when my apocalypses aren't fun.
But also, but the only reason I haven't brought up the Resident Evil games in this episode is because those are actually a dystopia.
Yeah.
I would argue. So
Yeah.
I am going to save that for the dystopia episode.
Yeah. And so, like, what I was about to bring up was, reminds me of a Netflix series that was out, which weirdly got like 3 or 4 seasons of it, but also it's a book series, where it called Last Kids on Earth. They have a zombie apocalypse, and also a monster apocalypse, also like a vortex of some sort, and I believe magic's a thing in there too. So like, they just glue apocalypses together and hope for and see what comes out.
Was
Just
it
3
good?
apocalypses in a trench coat.
Yeah.
Was it good? Like, did they retcon it in a way that was fun at least?
It was
Because
all right for it.
Resident Evil didn't do it in a way that I
Yeah,
felt like was
it's
fun.
all right. I was in it for the first season. I kind of checked out for the second season. Um, and it just got all over the place for some of its stuff. But yeah, that's a case where we're like, we don't need one Oh yeah, and all the parents are missing too. That's part of the apocalypse too. They're all
Yes.
gone.
We've had a lot of
Jealous.
apocalypse. Hi.
Yeah. So like, you want an apocalypse, you can do that. And technically speaking, you can make your apocalypse work with more than one apocalypse if you want to.
Yeah,
It
you
just
can
sort
have
of
a
how
whole mess of stuff.
But that one's a whole mess of it.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I need to backtrack really quick to The Last of Us. Because The Last of Us was actually hinted at in Uncharted 3. And so in Uncharted 3, in the beginning, you get into a bar fight. And when you go downstairs, you have to go out through the back kitchen. But before you do that, if you go around the bar area, there is a magazine or a newspaper on the counter talking about these new fungal spores that had been found and were causing some weird like side effects or something. And I think that that's neat because Uncharted is like, I mean, it's probably just like an Easter egg because to say like, hey, we're working on this other game because that
Mhm.
Uncharted 3 came out in 2011 and The Last of Us came out in 2013. But I think it's a neat thought that Uncharted is like a timeline where the apocalypse didn't happen, and then The Last of Us is where it did happen. But yeah, you can it's just a very simple, like, and I'm sure at the time nobody even considered, like, just like, oh, haha, look, it's a newspaper. But then in hindsight, 2 years later, everyone's like, ah! Like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
All
Anyway, I'm sorry. I wanted to run back to that really quick.
right.
Like, wait.
That's okay.
Well, I've got a challenge to the listeners, if I may.
Challenge away.
Let us know in the comment what your apocalypse skill is.
Yeah.
You'll
Let
be
us know.
surprised. Something that will work that you don't need a whole lot of things to make it work right.
Can you
And what apocalypse are you hoping for if you have to choose one?
If I could choose my own apocalypse, I personally would go. And actually, let's end this episode with that. If you could pick one apocalypse to deal with, which one would you go with? I, for one, would like to go with the monster apocalypse. I don't know, but to me, having something that's tangible that I might be able to beat down, just I'm probably gonna lose, but I got a shot. That's all I need.
Yeah, I think monster apocalypse, but not vampire or zombie. Those seem too insurmountable. I'm gonna go dragon.
The dragon apocalypse.
Nice.
Yeah.
By the way, Rain of
Much
Fire.
more
That's a
approachable.
dragon apocalypse.
Very approachable, right? Like I've played enough games and played enough D&D, and like I think I could figure out how to take one down.
Here's the thing. Speaking of monster apocalypse, I don't want the ones in Metro. Although I like the Metro ones, the Metro as a concept, that's not the one I'm dealing with. I would do more of a Love and Monsters type thing.
I definitely don't want kaiju either because I'm just a little guy.
I would probably want something like a magic apocalypse, something where you get like your own special skill is what comes in handy when you get magic. It's like I think that would be a really fun story to tell.
Oh, it'd be a fun one.
That would be cool. Although, like, I already kind of have a useless superpower, and it wouldn't save me. So, knowing my luck, I would get like the worst magic ever.
What would it be?
Well, I have double jointed thumbs.
Oh. I don't have anything cool
No,
like that.
no reason. I don't know why. I can just pop my thumbs out of joint and back in, and it's fine.
I hope that's not the no, that's actually the only spells I got from this.
Yeah, I'm just like, ha.
What about you, Leo? I can shoot a fireball. I got a basic fireball I can do. Dane, my thumbs.
I cast dislocate thumb.
Yeah.
No, all my stuff is like my knees hurt all the time. So, like,
that's a superpower in a way.
I guess.
It's not a good one. I'm just saying it exists.
Yeah, I just know that like knowing my luck, it'd be like, yeah, I can like pull off bracelets. Ho, take that, handcuffs.
All right. And what about you, Zombie?
Name aside, I would not want a zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I would survive it.
I just hope that if you're not gonna survive if a zombie apocalypse happens, I'll be honest, I'm gonna be there going cliche.
Just a
Lame.
horde covers Geek Scorpio.
It's like
You're
Simpsons did
unoriginal.
it. You know?
I think I would like something like a plant apocalypse. Because
Like
I'm nice
clickers?
to plants. Hopefully
Mhm.
like what?
Clickers.
No, not those kinds. Those are scary. Those are the only
Oh.
scary part of that game.
Or you could be like the day of the triads? Triple?
The
It's an
triple
old
triads?
1960s, 50s
That's
monster
it.
movie.
I want the triple triad apocalypse.
I would accept the Queen's Blood Apocalypse if that has to be second choice.
God, that would be so fun. I
That's
love
so
that
good.
game.
What was the one
Um,
apocalypse where it was caused by the trees?
The Happening.
Sign. Oh no, The Happening.
The
Signs of
Happening.
Aliens.
Guys, that's Lord of the Rings.
Man, you know how much out of an apocalypse it would be if it was like a bunch of treants? They're so mad.
The Ents marched to war. They toppled regimes. That's all I'm saying.
I think genuinely, if not plant apocalypse, then water apocalypse.
Water world. Land is not a
Are
myth.
you a good swimmer?
Yes.
I'm the first to
Also-
go.
Oh no, are you not?
On the coast. No, I'm a great swimmer, but I'm on the coast.
Oh, that's true.
We'll just drive inland.
We'll miss you. Yeah,
You just.
come visit.
Oh, Ashwood, why are you visiting? No reason.
Just close the blinds
Yeah.
on the big
Before
wave
I-
that's coming.
The water's rising.
Before I close this out, I'm going to end this with a little thing I loved about time zones and a Conan O'Brien joke from his show that just sticks with me this entire time. Back in the 1999, when people were predicting the apocalypse from 1999 and the Y2K zone, I just loved it because there was a set of kids who are kids with their parents who are watching this disaster happening on TV, and one child and they're like, "Oh no, this disaster's happening exactly at midnight during Y2K." Man, am I glad we live on the Pacific time zone. We still got a couple of hours.
Y2K.
Oh man.
Yeah, speaking of like potential apocalypses,
Mhm.
people thought that was gonna be it. That like
Yeah. Y2K was a big thing.
civilization was gonna die.
Yeah.
Now, coming up at some point later, we'll have a podcast episode about how to prevent an apocalypse, because those stories are kind of really interesting where you're just at the precipice of trying to stop those. But that will be for a future podcast episode. That being said, our next episode will be coming out April 19th.
That's a good
That
day.
being said, we'll be seeing you guys there. Thanks for everybody for listening to us. And this is the Gaming Theater Podcast, logging out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game, stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.